Mhm.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Is Jay here?
I haven't seen him yet.
Okay.
All right. Somebody give me a shout when he gets here, will you?
Will do.
Oh, nuts.
There he is, Betsy. He's in.
Thank you.
No problem.
Hi, Jay.
Morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Hey, hey.
Yeah.
All right.
Morning.
Sorry I'm a little late here this morning. So before we get started, I wanted to ask you guys if you had any specific questions as it related to DocuSign and or Zipforms.
It's still the best way to start all of this paperwork when you're doing a contract via Zipforms, right? We don't want to start this in command, correct?
Yes and no. We'll walk through that a little bit. Most of the glitches I found over the weekend that have been plaguing DocuSign, have been corrected. So we'll walk through that this morning. And you should only need Zipforms as as a backup. But we'll go through that, and hopefully after this, InString will be able to decide whether or not that is necessary. Any other questions?
Are there templates or like that you can set up via DocuSign that you can just go back to each time?
Yes. So, and especially for you, Krista, one of the best things might be to do is to set up those templates, and I will make sure there's a video that kind of walks you through how to do that. So there are two different versions of DocuSign, if you will. There is the Rooms version, which is what we use with KW. And then there's also the standard version of DocuSign. In order to create those templates, you have to go into that side of it.
The standard
Once you get in
version.
there, it makes sense. Yeah. But I'll show you how to do that. There's a video.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Mhm. Anything else? All right. Well, I am going to bear with me one second while I pull up my screen here and share that with you. All right, are y'all able to see my screen?
Yes. I can see.
Okay. All right, so we are going to log in to Command. So use your credentials and get logged in. Now I'm going to walk you through how to set up everything from like a buyer's agreement, and then we'll even practice writing a contract. So we're going to do this on the buyer side. If there's anybody that really wants to do it on the seller side, if we have time at the end, I'll definitely do that too. But I don't want to take up too much of your time.
Jay,
All right, so go ahead.
Jay, should we be doing this on our screens as well?
So that's up to you. If you have two screens and can see me and do it, that's probably a good idea. If you only have one screen, it's probably going to be a bit of a challenge for you to do it and watch at the same time.
Okay.
Kristen is recording this, so you'll be able to go back and watch it later.
Yeah, we'll post it to the YouTube channel so that you guys can go view it.
Yep. All right. So what we're going to do is we are going to create a new opportunity. So go into opportunities. Now, for those of you that are working with one already, you would just start in your opportunity dashboard. But I am going to create a new opportunity. All right. So, follow the prompts here, select Charles One Stashly if that's your market center. Those of you who have been in multiple market centers, you want to make sure always that this is the correct one. Opportunity type, we're going to do buyer because that's what we're working on. The owner is you, unless, of course, you're on a team and it's someone else. Client. So here you're going to pick a client, and I am going to pick my mom for this sample opportunity. You also have the opportunity here to add in a co-buyer, so a second person that's part of the transaction. And then the opportunity name, as many of you probably know, the opportunity name defaults to the client's name dash the type of opportunity. So in this case, it's Sukanity dash buyer. You can change that to anything that you want it to be. Ideally, you want the address to be here. At this point of a purchase phase, you probably don't know that yet though. But whatever makes it easiest for you to find information on this client, and also makes it easy for your client or for your coordinator, your transaction coordinator person to find it, and also the compliance coordinator to find it. Because with your transaction coordinator, they may be working multiple files at one time, and with the compliance coordinator, they're working every single file in the office. So you want to be able for them to see that and find it pretty easily. You also have the option of custom tags here. So this is sort of like your contact tags. These are separate from that though. So if you set up your contact tags, these tags for opportunities are a little different. But this allows you to sort through opportunities based on buyer, based on seller, whatever you want to set that tag up. And that's where you would select that here if that's what you're using. Estimated close date. If you're really early in the process, you probably do not know this, so leave it blank and maybe instead select a time frame. But you want to try to put in as much information here as possible because this really helps calculate your GCI and your projections and all that sort of stuff. So try to be as accurate as possible, but if you don't know it, then leave it alone. Just make sure that you come back throughout the process as you're updating your opportunity and add that. So I'm going to say in this case that we're a 3-month time frame because we don't really know exactly what's going on with the close date. Budget is 350,000. Commission rate is 3. Now, what I say on commission rate from a projection standpoint, especially on the buyer side, is that you don't have control over that commission rate. You generally get the commission that the seller has agreed to co-op with you. So from a conservatism standpoint, you may want to put 2.5 here as your general rule, and that helps you project, your numbers conservatively. Or, you can put 3, whatever you want to do. I think the recommendation there is to try to be a little conservative with your numbers on the buy side. Obviously, on the sales side, you control that side of the commission. So if this was a seller's listing, then you could put 3 there for sure, or 4 or 5, whatever it is that you charge. And then at the bottom, it asks you where in the opportunity phase do you want to put this. So this is, cultivate's the very first part. So that's where it defaults to, but you can change that to any of the first 3. So cultivate, appointment, or active. And then once you select one of those, then you can select the stage after that. So we're going to leave it where it is. And I have to move your faces around so I can see the bottom of the screen. And then click create. Any questions so far? All right. So now you come into the opportunity dashboard, and this is all the specific information for that particular opportunity. Now, as you're working this transaction, you want to come back in here and update as many things as possible to keep this updated. And you also want to, drag and drop it through the transaction pipeline. So throughout the opportunity, when you're getting information about things that are, agreements, contracts that you've written or whatever, you want to come in and edit these and put in those dates. What that does is it really helps you track your conversion rates and things like that, and helps you know, all right, well, typically, from the time that I enter into a buyer agency agreement until we actually get under contract is 27 days or whatever. And as you know more of this information, how to project your business, and especially as we head into what is likely a shift, having those numbers and data is going to be so crucial to the success of your business. So try to keep this information updated as often as possible. All right. So in order to get to documents, obviously we have to go to the documents tab. So we're going to select that. And one of the things to keep in mind is when you come into this tab, this is a placeholder for all of your ratified documents. So in order for you to be able to put those in here, you've got to select one of your checklist types. So we now have 3 different options to choose from that Tiffany has built out for us. So we have residential, new construction, and commercial. And these templates help decide where documents go in the transaction process. So if you're working a commercial deal or a new construction deal, that's going to look a little different than if you're working just a standard residential deal. In this case, we're going to go with residential. So we're going to select that. And then it's going to give us all the different types of forms that we need. In the consult folder, we need the LR relationship disclosure, and we also need the buyer agency agreement. So that's the only 2 forms that are needed in the consult part. Once you get those in, you can submit it to the Market Center. Then you have under contract. These are all the placeholders for all the documents that you may come across that you need during the transaction. So for this point, this is the compliance side. This is after you've already set up all your documents and gotten them signed. I just wanted to kind of review that to make sure that you understood that there are different slots and folders for everything. So in this case, because we're just getting started with getting documents, we want to go up to the upper right here where it says start transaction. If you've already connected a folder to a DocuSign room, then this is going to say go to transaction, okay? So just be mindful that this looks differently depending on where you are in the process. But if it's a brand new opportunity that you've not connected to a DocuSign room, then it's going to say start transaction. Now, it's also important to note that at this point, if you are choosing to pay for .loop and use .loop instead, you still can do that. And here is where you would select whether you want to use DocuSign, which is free and provided to you by the Market Center, or whether you wanted to use .loop, which is a transaction platform that you would have to pay for. All right. So in this case, we're going to select DocuSign, and we're going to go over into the DocuSign room. Now, if you have a pop-up blocker, sometimes that will prevent you from opening it. So you may have to click on your pop-up blocker for that window to pop up. So just be aware. And then it's going to take you to DocuSign. I think most all of you have already connected and set up your DocuSign accounts. So I'm not going to really spend any time on that. If you haven't, we can come back to that later. Just let me know. So you need your username and password for DocuSign. And then it's going to take you to a room that it has created based on the information in your opportunity. Any questions about anything so far?
Not yet.
All right, so one of the things that DocuSign has started to do better, and it's going to continue to get better with Command, is that it's bringing over information on your clients from the opportunity. Initially, that information was not pulling over, and not all of it is yet, but that information is going to continue to flow freely as we move forward. So you can see that some of these things, like the contract amount, $350, that's pulling over from the budget. It's pulling over as much information as you've put into your opportunity. So while it's important for you to fill that out, that way this pulls over into DocuSign. All right, so we're gonna go to the Documents tab, because at first, that's the thing we're talking about. There are 2 different ways that you can set people up. So in this case, you can go to People and add people in by selecting Invite. And the reason that you would want to do that is you want to add your buyers to the room. Now you can also go over simply to the Details tab and add your clients on the right side by filling in that information. So it starts with sellers. So if you're representing the sellers, you want to start there. But in this case, we're not doing that. So I'm going to minimize those and we're going to go to the buyer. Now, again, it's pulled over here from command my client's information, all the information that it has. So it's got name, address, phone number. Okay. Now you want to make sure that all of this is filled out. So in this case, I don't have her physical address, so I need to put that in. Okay. So I want to edit and I want to put in that information. Now I'm going to move this because this is not her business phone, but that's really not that relevant as long as there's a phone number in there.
Hey guys, make sure to mute yourself.
Thank you.
Now, the reason that you want to fill this stuff in is because as you go through and complete your documents, you want as much of it to autofill as possible. If this stuff is not filled in, it can't autofill. So again, if you didn't fill it out in your command transaction in the opportunity part of command, then you definitely want to fill it out on this tab. Okay, so as much information as you can will help you fill out all the autofill stuff as you work through the transaction. You're going to see that this information screen has a lot of information on it. Obviously, you do not need all of it. You know, in this case, it talks about the location. So at this point in the transaction, we don't know which house they're going to buy yet. So we can't put anything there. It also even talks about offer details. In all fairness, you don't need to necessarily use this because this is going to try to autofill a contract that may not necessarily be accurate every single time. So unless you're coming back in here to edit this, I would honestly just leave this alone. What you really are wanting to fill out is the stuff on the right side. The left side stuff is optional, like the bigger part of the screen. But these things on the right side, the people, seller 1, seller 2, listing agent 1, listing agent 2, buyer 1, buyer 2, these are the ones you really want to make sure is correct. In particular, since we're talking about a buyer transaction, you want to make sure that your information here is accurate. Now, for some reason, it does not want to put on mine, I've been trying to get this to correct itself every time, but it does not want to put the company name Keller Williams Charleston West Ashley. So you want to correct that and make sure that that's there so that it auto-fills that in for you. The same is true for your address. So autofill all of that so that, again, this is the only time you're having to type it in. That way on every single document where it's needed, you don't have to fill it in. All right. So in this case, we only have me, the buyer's agent, and then my client. So I filled in all the information that I possibly can. So there's really nothing else for me to fill in at this point. So we're going to click save.
You don't fill in the buyer's agent information,
Well, you are the buyer's agent.
right? But I don't
So
see.
yes.
Oh, there, I'm sorry. I see it.
Yeah. See here?
Yeah, got it.
So you are the buyer's agent. So you want to make sure that your information is filled in here. If you were co-broking this with another agent, obviously that's the buyer agent too. But at this point, we don't know anything else. We don't know who the listing agent is because we don't know the property. So this is all we know so far. All right. So this detail screen is where you really want to come in and make sure that stuff's updated. Now, like I mentioned earlier, you could also go to the People's tab and add people this way. Now, one of the reasons that I have not used that function and that I would probably discourage some of you from doing it is because as soon as you add in a person here, that person, be it your client or anyone involved in the transaction, is going to get information about every time there's a document uploaded or updated or anything like that. For many of our clients, that is probably way too much information for them. It might be information overload. So I would discourage you from adding your clients in here. Now, if you're using a transaction coordinator, this is where you would add your transaction coordinator. So you would add that person with the ability to come in and see everything that's going on. So this is where you would add that information. You get to control here whether they get to see the list side of the information, whether they get to see the buy side of the information, whether they get to see both, okay? That's up to you, however you want to set that up. And then when you do that, it gives them a role. So let's say, for instance, I'm going to add someone in, and then it gives you a role, an option to select a role. Sorry. Well, it's not giving us the actual drop-down screen, because there's supposed to be a transaction coordinator role in here.
You broke
so
it.
if that is there, then obviously you can create it. It happens. But anyway, so if you're using a transaction coordinator, this is where you would add that person. All right, any questions?
Yes, Jay, can you go back to the screen you were just on with the,
With people?
the KW admin? Is that a default that automatically shows up, or we have to fill that in?
Nope. It's a default that already automatically shows up. That way, Tiffany and any admin assigned by the Market Center can have access to your rooms to pull files for compliance.
But that pops up automatically.
Automatically. There's nothing you have to do to do it, to make it happen. And also, it's my understanding that you can't remove them either.
Thank you, Jay.
You're welcome. All right, so now we are back in the Documents tab, and this is where you're going to add in all your documents. So here, you can click Upload to bring in your own files if that's what you want to do, or you can add the documents by clicking the Add button in the upper right. We're going to use DocuSign forms, and they're going to pull those over from DocuSign. Now, if this is the first time you've done this, you want to make sure that you're selecting the Forms Library and then the South Carolina Association of Realtors. If you have not done this before, you may need to sign in to SCAR using your NRDS number. So if any of you are having that issue, let me know so that I don't leave you behind. But I want to make sure that you guys understand that some of you may be there and have not done that yet. All right, so this is where you're going to select your forms. So for the first part of the buyer transaction, all you need is 110, the disclosure of brokerage relationships, and then 130, the exclusive right to buy buyer agency agreement. So those are the first two forms that you need at this point in the process. So we're going to click those forms and we're going to add those in. All right. So for those of you who remember .loop, .loop did this part of this transaction was all part, is in one section, if you will. So it did your signatures and your, filling out the forms all in the same window. DocuSign is not set up like that. DocuSign does filling out the form first in one section, and then you move into a completely separate part of the process to apply signatures. So don't get caught up in the fact that there are certain parts that you can't fill out yet, because that's by design. So in this case, we're going to run through these forms. The first one, doesn't really need anything filled out. The only thing that it needs is a spot for a signature. So when you pull it up, you're not going to see a signature there, and that's on purpose. But you do want to know that it should autofill for all the other forms, everything that you need. So in this case, see, there's nothing to fill out. You just have a signature spot, so you're good here. All right, save and close. Then we're going to go into the buyer agency form.
I've been doing this for a year and 2 months now, and I still have a thing about the buyer agency form at one spot. So this is going to be good.
All right, so your form should autofill as much information as you filled in for it. So in this case, it's got your client's name and it's got the brokerage name right where it needs to be. Purpose of agency in this case is residential. General description. Now, you guys put whatever it is that you want to put here. My recommendation has always been to be generally vague here because you don't want to super restrict yourself. So in this case, like I always just put single family home or condo or whatever that might look like for your particular client. Approximate price range, 350,000,
Jay, quick question.
whatever, again.
Quick question on the general description. If they don't know, do you think it makes sense to put in single family home, townhouse, condo, or?
I mean, what I would suggest then, if they don't know, I would just go with what you do know that they know. So like say, for instance, they want a 2-bedroom or a 3-bedroom, it's just something like that. Again, be vague here. I'm spelling that wrong. That's still wrong. Isn't it? No, it's right. Anyway, so anywhere in the Charleston Metro, and then I leave these other two blank. Again, you guys get to do this however you want to fill it out. This is just kind of my go-to. You want to be, relatively vague with this description. All right, moving on down. The next area where we have to fill something out is section 5, where we talk about compensation. So the new version of this form is slightly different than the old version. Some of you probably remember the old version a little better. Now it gives you the option of how you want to do it. In our brokerage, we always definitely want to select A as a brokerage fee. Generally speaking, most of us are not using a retainer fee or a service fee, so that one's really unnecessary. Now, what's important for you to understand here is this line is designed for the initials of your clients. So if you're using option 1, then you need to put initials here. If they're using option 2, you need to put initials here. Now, I believe, and Joseph has said this to me, but you may want to have a conversation with him about it before you do it, that I have my clients sign both. And I'll explain why I do that. So in this case, it says buyer shall pay broker a brokerage fee, which is greater than a dollar amount, which in this case I put nothing, or 3%. And then I always put if within 90 days. So I don't specify a dollar amount because that's not how we do things. We do a percentage and then a reasonable time period after that. Now, the reason that I allow my buyers to sign both is this one says that that the buyer shall be responsible for paying that brokerage fee if you are not able to get that from the seller. Now, 99% of the time, you're going to get the co-op fee from the seller. So it may be 2.5%, maybe 2.25%, 2.75%, whatever. But that's where you're going to get your payment from the commission. Now, that's option 2. Okay, you're just going to take whatever the co-op is. That's what that means. Option 1 means that if either there is no co-op or the co-op is not enough, the buyer, you have the authority at that point to charge the buyer the difference. Now, again, 99% of the time, you're not going to need that. The only case where I see that really becomes relevant is in a for sale by owner. If the buyer you represent wants to buy a property that is for sale by owner and you have to negotiate your payment and or are unable to negotiate your payment from the seller, you definitely want to be able to have the option here that somebody's going to pay for it. Okay. So again, option 2 is the go-to. Option 1 is my additional recommendation to have them initial. You don't have to do it. You can just stick with option 2. But I just wanted to explain kind of how and why I do the way I do.
So it is okay for them to initial both option 1 and option 2?
Yes, I asked Joseph, we talked about it, and he was fine with that because in the old form, that really isn't any different than this one, except that they're initialing it specifically. You could select both options. All right. So the next thing, again, because we're not really using the retainer fee or service fee. I mean, you certainly can, but I don't really know anybody that practices that way. And then term of agency. So I think the go-to is at least 6 months. Some people do it for a year. That's completely up to you and how you want to run your business.
Excuse me, Jay,
But
quick question. In those above
Mhm.
blanks, you don't put N/A or anything. You just leave them blank.
I leave it completely blank.
Okay.
And the reason I do that, B, is because they have to initial it. Okay. If they weren't initialing here, then I would probably put NA or something like that. But because the clients have to initial this, like I'm gonna know if somebody added something later, and that's the only reason that I would want to mark something out or put NA is to prevent something from being added in later. But this has to be initialed, and I'm the only person that has the authority to allow them to initial it, so I don't really need an NA.
Thank you.
Mhm. So in this case, March 23rd, 2020. And so if you're doing 6 months, so that would be what, April, May, June, July, August, September 23rd. Whatever that date and time period works for you. Again, now in section 7, I talk about this a lot with making sure you only select 1, 3, and 5 because 2 and 4 contradict 3 and 5. However, because it's an initial, that option to fill out is not there. We're not there yet. So just pay no attention to that at the moment. Remember, we're just filling out the form. At this point, the broker does or does not have the buyer's permission to disclose the buyer's identity. For 99% of your clients, that's going to be does. The only situation is if the buyer wishes to maintain anonymity with a project or with a property. But in that case, they have to have additional documentation and forms that their attorneys fill out to keep their anonymity. And that's really it for this form. Okay. It gives you the option here to put in information for your client. You can definitely do that if you want. You don't have to.
And Jay, any contingencies would be filled in here that might be in order, right?
If you have any contingencies that you wanted to add in, I can't think of one that you would, but it's certainly possible. And especially if you work on a team, you may have some of those contingencies. All right, so the form itself is filled out. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward, not hard to do. And so we can click Save and Close. So at this point, these forms are ready to go. They just need signatures. So now we'll move into how you obtain signatures on your forms. All right. So the way that you do signatures is through an envelope. So go into the envelopes tab. And because we're new in this window, you're going to need to create a new envelope. And it's going to ask you, what's the envelope name? So in this case, I'm going to say this is the buyer agency packet.
Two things in the buyer agency now.
And then we're going to select from the documents in the room to add to the envelope. So room docs, and there's only 2 in there. So select both of them and then add selected. And then it's going to pull those documents that you've already filled in into the envelope. Now, I also want to tell you what you put up here in the envelope name. I always copy that because I'm going to put it down here in the subject line too. So it says, please DocuSign buyer agency packet. Because this is what your clients are going to see in their email subject line. All right. It also gives you the option to add a recipient. Now, if you've added the person into the room, you can add a room participant. If you've done the detail screen and filled in people there, then you want to add pre-tagged roles. So this is where we're going to select buyer 1 and buyer agent, which is me and my client. and you're going to select them in the drop down. Okay. And you want to make sure that you've got a name and an email. Now, if you didn't have that in here, it would tell you and it would ask you what those are, because those are the two essential pieces in order for this to work. So we've added buyer 1 and buyer agent. Now, if you have buyer 2, if in your case there are 2 people, then you obviously would add the second person and add selected. So now that's going to put the people here, and it should default always to having both of them at number 1. And what that means is that everybody gets the documents at the same time, and it's not waiting on anybody to sign before somebody else signs. If you went in a numerical order here, number 1 would get the documents first, and number 2 would not get those documents until number 1 had signed them. Okay. There's nothing wrong with doing it that way, except that it may make it longer for you to get those documents back. But the default is that everybody gets it at the same time, and that's what I would recommend that you go with. Now, in this case, for the buyer agency package, I leave the email message blank because it's pretty straightforward. All they need to do is sign it. They don't really need to do anything else. I'll show you, especially with on the listing side, why you would want to put stuff there to help give them instructions. But in this case, it's pretty straightforward. So we're ready to move forward. So we're going to click next. We've got all our documents. We've got all our people. We're ready to assign signatures. Now, DocuSign is going to autofill a lot of the blanks for you, but may not fill all of them. So we want to kind of walk through and make sure that all the signature spots that we need are there. And of course, the interweb is being slow. All right. So now we see the documents coming through. And for some reason, they still haven't gotten, actually, no, it looks like they have. Let's see. Yep, there is the signature. Now I want you to pay very close attention to those of you who aren't familiar with DocuSign yet. The signature boxes that go in are color coordinated to the person to whom they are signing, okay? So in this case, this is a blue signature field, and this is because the client is blue, okay? Now in this case, I am yellow, so all the yellow boxes are for me to sign. Does everybody see that and understand that?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
You want to make sure that your clients and you know, that you understand whose role is which, and also know that there's no rhyme or reason to the color. It just assigns a color based on the number of people. So if there were 6 people in here that you were working through signatures for, you'd have 6 different color boxes. All right. So it's got signature here and the date. So we're good on that form. And then it's got an initial for my client and an initial for me on this form. So we're good. And here's where we get to where we want to pay close attention. So in section 5, remember we talked about the option of signing both. Now both initials are auto-filled, but it's important to understand that when I click on this initial, it does not say that it's required. All right. Now if I come up here and click on this one just to show you, it says required by default. All right. I want to make you guys understand that this option is not required, which means that DocuSign, when your client receives these documents to sign it, is not going to force them to sign it. They're going to have to know they have to sign it. Otherwise, they're going to leave it blank. All right. So in this case, since we're doing option 1 and 2, I'm going to select both. Because I'm super anal, I'm going to actually put it on the line. But then I'm going to click required because I want my clients to, I want the system to tell my clients they have to sign these 2 lines. Okay.
Mhm.
Now, in my case, I'm not using these two, so I can just delete those altogether. So the way that I did that is you select it, and then you can just hit backspace or delete on your keypad, and it'll delete those options. All right. Now the same is true in section 7. I'm going to select all of them and slide them over just because I'm anal like that. I also want to show you a little trick. So you've got all of them selected here. You just draw a box around them all to select them all. You can line them all up by clicking this button here. It aligns them. Again, just because I'm anal, I like things to be nice and neat. Now, again, these are not selected as required. So the system is not going to default your buyer to sign these. You're going to have to either tell them to sign them or they're just going to miss it. Now, we talked earlier too about options 2 and 4 not being there. So I'm going to take 2 and delete it and 4 and delete it because I don't need them. All I need is 1, 3, and 5. And then I also need for them to be required. Okay. So that gives you the 3 initials that you need.
So Jay,
then they're required.
that required window on the right just popped out when you had them highlighted?
Mm-hmm.
Thank
You have to select a signature field for that part to pop up.
Okay.
And so when you again, you just want to make sure that it's required. Otherwise, the system's not going to prompt them to sign it. And if you've not used it, I'll show you what that looks like in just a second. So we've got the buyer's initial and the broker's initial, which is you. And then that should be it. Because these 2 initials on the bottom of the page should be there for you already. And then the signature field is there for you already. Now, I don't see the need in this text box field, so I just delete it because the date is going to time and date it here, so I don't need that text field. You don't have to delete it. Again, I'm just anal, so I do. And everything is ready to roll. Any questions?
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, Jay, I have a question.
Go for it.
When I did my when I pulled up my agreement or whatever, the automatic signatures did not pop up. There's nothing on any of it. There's no blue, there's no yellow, there's no nothing for me.
Okay. My guess is, since I can't see your screen, my guess is likely that you did not have any information filled in for those roles. So it's not going to auto-populate unless those roles are automatically filled in. So like buyer 1 in the information screen needs to be filled in order for it to populate a signature for buyer 1.
Okay.
If you have that and it's still not working, then my thought is when you go into the envelope and you select the people that need to sign it, if you didn't make selections there, it's not going to autofill. It's one of those 2 that's happening. Otherwise, it should autofill those signature spots for you. Now,
okay.
In this case, since you're already in the document, if you wanted to manually add them, I can show you how to do that really quickly.
Yeah, I saw that option. I just was hoping to have it automatically done. I think when I went back to the recipients, I noticed on yours when you had the recipient, you had like buyer 1 and then the person's name and email, then you had buyer agent 1.
Correct.
I just have the people's name and email. There's no buyer 1 there. So
you have to assign them a role, otherwise it can't autofill for them.
Okay.
Because it doesn't know where to put their signature. Because see, in this case, this blue box here on my screen, that's buyer 1. If I had told it that it was buyer 2, it would have put it right here.
Okay.
Does that make
In
sense?
a different color.
Yeah.
It may very well have been blue. Again, the colors are only indicative of how many different people have been assigned. The colors don't necessarily correlate to a buyer 1 or buyer 2.
Okay.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
It does. I just got to figure out how to assign those
Yep.
people.
So when
Because
in your envelope, and I'll go back to that in a second, but in your envelope, you just want to make sure that you're assigning a role, because without a role, DocuSign doesn't know where to put those signature fields.
Okay.
I'll come back to that in just a second, because
Okay,
we're
that's
gonna
fine.
do one more form, and I'll make sure to point that out.
Okay. Thanks.
All right. Any other questions? Now, for those of you that maybe one or two didn't autofill or something, all you have to do is you selected the person here that needs to sign. So in this case, it's client first, for instance. I need an initial, so I'm going to click the initial, and then I'm going to come over here and drag and drop. Now, it always puts it in this ginormous size, so I make it a little smaller so that it fits into the space. But that's where you would do that if you needed to. And you just drag and drop anything that you need over here from the left onto where you need it on the document. All right. So in this case, I would go ahead and send this document out for signature. And the way you would do that, everything's ready. You just click send. Now, I'm not going to do that because I don't want to send my mom documents that she doesn't know are coming. But what I will show you is in this recipient preview. I want to show you guys what it looks like on the client side. And you can see this anytime because this is in every one of your windows as well. You can click recipient preview and it's going to give you kind of an idea of what they see. So when they get the document and open it up, or when they get the email, that is, and open it up, this is what it's going to look like on their end. And then it's going to walk them through how to sign. So the first thing that they're going to get that this doesn't show you is that they have to agree to the terms and conditions of DocuSign. They would check that box, and then they would have the option to check start. Once you click start, then you just click on everywhere that they need to sign, and it's just going to roll through. And you can see here where it's made them select both here, but it skipped right over this one because there's no fields there. Okay, and then we're going to assign all that. We're just going to click all the way through and it's boom and done. All right. Now in this case, then it would pop up and say finish, but because this isn't real, it doesn't give us that option. And they're done. They're done signing. It's click, 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 done. But you can also see that the system, if it does not have a required field, the system's going to swing right over it and they're just going to click away and then they're not going to sign that section. So if it's a section that needs a required, or that you have to have a signature, you want to make sure that it's required. All right, any questions? So if you were ready to send it, obviously go ahead and click send. I'm going to back out because I don't need to send this actual document.
Okay, quick question. Can we host, and this may be a different conversation. Can we host an in-person signing like we could in .loop?
You can. One of the things that we've had a lot of discussion with other tech ambassadors about is essentially frowning upon that. And the reason being is even with DocuSign, with .loop, that created a few potential legal challenges. With DocuSign, I don't think it's really more or less a legal challenge with DocuSign than it was with .loop, but it creates a legal challenge. So what happens when you sign, when you host an in-person signing, is there will be a document called the verification document, called certification document that DocuSign automatically creates for every signature, for every document that gets signatures. That certification document documents the IP address that each user was using. In the event that you had to go to mediation or a trial for something that may have involved your client alleging that they were unaware of something, if they signed on an in-person signing on the exact same IP address as you, then it could create a slight challenge for you to argue that they knew what they were signing and that they signed it on their own volition. Because if you send this to them and they sign it on their computer, then the legal precedent is that they had the opportunity to review it and ask questions, and they didn't. Whereas if you hosted in-person signing and all of you are using the same IP address on that certification document, then they could then make the argument that they didn't even know what they were signing, or that they didn't sign it at all, that you signed it for them. So you can do an in-person signing. I would just, recommend that you only do that in a, kind of last resort situation where you didn't really have any other option. That was kind of a long answer, but does that make sense? Did I lose you?
Hey,
Oh,
Jay,
no, sorry, I was muted. No, that
Oh,
was
okay,
perfect.
good.
Thank you.
Okay.
Jay, it's April. So even if we're on like separate computers or laptops at the home, and they want to go ahead and like, could you send the DocuSign from there and they sign off?
Absolutely. So
Okay, that's fine.
if they're
It can't
using
be
their own
my
laptop,
computer.
if they're using their own laptop and you're right there in front of them, by all means, go ahead and have them send it out and have them sign it, and you can walk them through it for sure.
Okay.
But again, that the separation there is just because of the different computers. Because again, that certification document is going to show the IP address of each user, and if it's the same IP address, then it could be said that they may not have even signed the documents that you signed them for them.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Again, that's a very rare set of circumstances that's even going to come up. But it's just something that we've talked about and want to make sure that you guys are aware of in the event that that's really your only option. Just be mindful that you have a conversation with your clients about what that is that they're signing. All right. So I'm going to exit out of this one since we're kind of done with that one. And then I'm going to go back into documents. So we've got buyer agency signed at this point, and now we're ready to write an offer. Okay. So I'm going to come in, and we need to add another document. So add DocuSign forms. I wish that you didn't have to select that every single time, but you do. All right, and
Jay, I have one more
Okay.
question. So if we're going back at this transaction at a later date, so we don't have to go into command, we just can sign directly into DocuSign to do.
You can. I discourage that simply because when you sign into DocuSign specifically, it's probably not going to take you into your Rooms account. And
Okay.
two, even if it does take you into your Rooms account, you're going to have to then go into that individual room. And once you've got multiple rooms going on, that's kind of difficult to get to. The best practice there is to always access it through command.
Okay, thanks.
Now, again, you certainly can access it by logging into DocuSign directly. It's just that honestly, it takes like 4 steps that you just don't have to go through if you do through command.
No, I want to know the easiest, so
Yep.
I appreciate that.
Command is absolutely the easiest. All right, so in this case, we're getting ready to write our contract, so that's Form 310, and I'm going to add that in. Thankfully, because the due diligence addendum is no longer an addendum, it's part of the contract, we don't really need any other documents at this point. So I've got my contract in, and now I'm ready to fill it out. So I'm going to click on that and let it pull up. Now, I'm not going to be specific on filling out the contract. I'm honestly just going to kind of run through it really quickly. Contracts class is a completely different class. And I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on the specifics of filling out the contract. I just want to make sure that you guys get the gist of filling it out. Again, a lot of this information is going to auto-populate. The more information that you have in your detail screen, the more information that's going to auto-populate. So if it's not auto-populating something, that's because you didn't choose, you didn't fill in that appropriate information. So I'm going to go through and fill out a few things just to make it a thing. Now, one of the things that I don't love about, actually, maybe we're working better now. Hey, they fixed that. I can now put my commas and my decimal points in. That was an issue that we were having with this form, but that looks to be corrected. I strongly encourage commas. It makes, especially when there's more than one comma, it makes reading it a lot easier. Now, one of the things that it doesn't do in this case that Zipforms and .loop always did was it always then also wrote out the amount. I don't know if this is going to work. Let's try it. It seems to be allowing me to keep it there. We'll see if that works through when we go through it. This is just a general practice that I think is a good idea. I promise you guys, I'm working with DocuSign directly on getting this to be something that when you fill in the number, it just types out the name for you. That's what Zipforms does. That's what DocLoop did. But it's okay, honestly, if you don't type out the name, like the words, and you just keep the $sign in, that's fine. It just may not be what some of you are used to. Again, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time filling out the specifics. I just want to make sure that a few of the things are yes, it does appear that some of these glitches that we were having have been corrected. So that's exciting news. All right. So I'm just rolling through here. I don't really, those were the issues that we had previously been having with .loop, and it seems that they've all been corrected. So I'm not going to do a whole lot more filling it in here because we're ready to go from a signature standpoint. So we've got the document filled out. Everything that we need is there. And so I'm going to click Save and Close. I was afraid that was going to happen. Let's just delete those texts and see if it'll work. It appears to work.
Oh, so they don't want you to type in the dollar amount.
They don't, simply because they want it to be in a number format. So that's, they have fixed all the other glitches, it seems, that I had asked them about. That's the only one that they haven't fixed. So I'm going to keep pushing on that one to get that to be corrected. The object of what I intended for them to do there was when you type in the number, the number amount, that it would automatically convert that into text for you. Again, .loop does it, Zipforms does it. And I know that DocuSign has that ability. They just don't have it filled into that blank correctly. So I'm working on that. So 90% of the issues we were having have been corrected. So that's the only real one. And in all fairness, that's not one that we can't live without.
Yeah.
Okay. So again, now I need signatures on that document. So I'm going to go into envelopes, create a new envelope for that. Click new. Please DocuSign purchase agreement. I'm just going to delete please DocuSign purchase agreement. Again, I'm going to copy that down here. Room docs. I'm going to add in my agreement. And then I'm going to add my recipient. So again, pre-tagged roles. And again, this is where you want to select it. So buyer one, and oh, there is no buyer agent because there's nowhere for you to sign on this one. And then your client's name. So if you don't have a role here, that's why it's not assigning the signatures. And I can't remember who it was that said that, but if you're still having that trouble, let me know and we can get on Zoom together either later today or tomorrow, and I can make sure that what you're doing is accurate. And if you're still having that glitch, then maybe we need to report that further.
Yeah, for me, the role is on the far right side, and it says who the role is, but the role is not on the left like it is on yours.
Okay. Clay,
So
if you're still
it
having
still
that
says
trouble
buyer
and
one.
can't get through it.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, like, it does say buyer one off to the right under role, but it's not looking like your screen.
Okay. All right. What I may do, if you're still having that trouble where it's not auto-filling those signatures, then touch base with me either later this afternoon or tomorrow, and we can try to get on a Zoom call, just the two of us, and I can try to walk you through that and hopefully figure out why that's the case.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. All right. So add selected. So I am ready to roll. Click next. Excuse me. All right. So again, it should auto-fill all of the signature spaces. So again, remember earlier, yellow is the first color, I think, that it always assigns. It has absolutely no correlation to a buyer, a seller, a buyer one, a buyer two, any of that. It's just that they assign colors based on the number of people that need to sign. All right. So we've got the initial here for acknowledgement. Now I will show you here, it does seem that they took out my commas.
Huh.
So that glitch is still there apparently. I'm gonna continue to press DocuSign on that because that is something that we definitely need to get corrected. And you can see here, it took the comma out, but it kept it in these two. So that's the issue. They just got those formatted incorrectly. And it should be a pretty easy fix. It's just that, you know, they have 1,000 different documents that they are trying to get fixed. But anyway, so it's got all of our initials and we're ready to move forward. Now, you may need to add initials and things at other points. And in those cases, you know, you just drag and drop your initial where you need to add it. In this case, because it's a brand new, fresh document, that's not necessary. But if you're working through other documents, perhaps you will. All right, any questions about what we've worked through so far?
Jay?
Go for it.
I'm sorry, but I have to leave. I have a 11:45 meeting scheduled. I'm sorry, I didn't know. I thought it was just going to be an hour long.
Yep, I should have mentioned that with Kristen. I knew that an hour was probably not enough time. That's why we did 10:30 because that gave us until noon.
Yeah.
Just because I knew that going through all of this was going to be a little bit more than an hour.
Okay, well, anyway,
We
thank
will
you.
probably have. We will absolutely. We're probably going to have one of these a week on .loop or on DocuSign. I want to make sure that you guys understand the ability when you are uploading forms, how to add stuff to them. And we don't have time to do that today. So Kristen and I will work out a time where we can schedule that. And again, it'll be recorded. So you'll be able to go to the YouTube channel and watch it at any time.
Very much.
Thanks for joining me, Betsy.
I can figure out how to get out of here. That would be great.
So in your Zoom,
Leave meeting.
There you
Bye.
go. All right, any other questions, guys? Oh, and I wanted to add, I was just looking through the chat. Krista had said when we were talking about in-person signings, she said it would probably be safer just to do an ink signature in that scenario, and that's probably very true. And especially if you're working with technologically challenged people, particularly older people, maybe that's the scenario you want to go through. Now, obviously, given our current health crisis, you probably don't want to go meet with your old people face to face. You want to try to walk them through signing it electronically if possible. But in the normal world, having an ink signature might just be the best alternative. That way, you're not having to have that issue of in-person signings and the IP address being the same. All right, any final questions? All right. So I will work with Kristen to schedule out another one where we talk about how to upload documents. Like say you've gotten an offer on a listing or something like that, and you need to add signatures and stuff to it. So we need to do one of those. Is there anything else that you guys want to see us kind of walk you through how to do as it relates to DocuSign?
No, sir.
Okay. Well, if no one has any questions, I think that kind of wraps it up for today.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jay. That was very
Absolutely.
useful. Very
Thank
useful.
you, Jay.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Have a great day.
If like y'all too, and like I said, Kristen will be posting this to our YouTube channel, so you'll be able to go and watch it anytime and fast forward and rewind and all that sort of stuff. So
What is our YouTube
y'all have a
channel?
great day. Let me know if you need anything.
Jay, what is our YouTube channel?
Kristen, are you still on? I think maybe Kristen popped off. I don't know it right offhand, but we'll post that stuff on the Facebook page, and also I'll have her send out that email so that everybody can get access to the YouTube channel. I'm pretty sure it's Keller Williams, Charleston, West Ashley, or some variation thereof, but I'll make sure we get that out there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Absolutely. Y'all have a great day.
Jay.
You too.
Bye-bye.